Conservative Refuge Radio.
Why ain't you gonna press the flesh, Pappy? Do a little politicking?
I'll press your flesh, you with son bitch. You don't tell your pappy how to cut the electorate. We ain't one at a time in here. We're mass communicating.
Ever heard of a little thing called the internet?
You are listening to the Conservative Refuge, and here is your host, Red Merlin co-founder, classic radio voice, and all-around nice guy, Greg Klein.
It is a haunted, swarming around your political correct world isn't correct, I found. An angry young man, that's what I became. The day that you got full of yourself, and now only you're to blame.
Hello and welcome to an all-new installment of Conservative Refuge Radio here on the Red Maryland Network, live from the Jim Plunkett Studios in the heart of the business district in Severna Park, Maryland, on the very cold but still bucolic western shore of Maryland. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Greg Klein.
All right, 7:50 the time, and joining me now on the newsmaker line, Greg Klein, with our Red Maryland segment, new to the morning program here. And Greg, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Doing great, and certainly glad to have this segment here.
Yes, thank you. Mike Bradley, WGMD 92.7 FM on the Eastern Shore, WGMD.com, tune in radio app, the WGMD app. I am on the Red Maryland segment every Thursday morning at 7:50 a.m. You want to check it out. Great radio station. Check it out. Check it out on the internet. Good local coverage, both of Delaware and Maryland politics, as well as national coverage as well. So a really fantastic station. Urge you to check that out. Now, we've got a lot on tap tonight. We've got a jam-packed show. Now, I was going to record this over the weekend. This is a special Monday edition, kind of making up for last Saturday. If you missed it, here it is. If not, you didn't even know you missed it, and you're getting it anyway. We got a lot to cover. Here's what we got on tap. The latest, Governor Early. Wow, right out of the chute, Greg. Let's try this again. Take two. Governor Hogan has, I don't edit, I record live. John Frenay says we're brave to do it. We're just lazy, really. Governor Hogan has released the latest budget in 2019 fiscal year for this legislative session. We're going to talk about that, interesting things about it. We'll look at how the Washington Post take on it is, how the Kerwin Commission plays in, talk more about that. That's going to be a huge issue in this session and going forward. We'll cover that here in the first segment. And then I've got some cycling news. You all love it when I talk cycling. It is the legislative session. 2017, Maryland General Assembly has convened. And as they do every year, and as we've been covering it here every year for the last 3 or 4 years that we've been doing the show, the cycling lobby has their agenda. I'm going to share it with you from their group, from their own website. And a lot of it's the same old rehashed ideas that have changed over time, and I'll lay all this out for you. If you knew the show and you haven't heard us talking about this, then sit back and enjoy, because this is what the cyclist lobby is going to try and do. If you're a cyclist and you like riding on roads, you're probably going to like it. If you're anybody else, this is not going to be good for you, okay? And then later on, we're going to bring back, I couldn't decide whether to put this particular story into one of two regularly recurring segments that we have here on the show. One is called the Nutball Box, where we talk about extreme ideologies that are becoming more mainstream. You know, when I started doing that segment in 2007, it was an interesting segment. Now it's terrifying, because that phenomenon that I was noticing then has come to pass in such a way that it is terrifying. And I'm going to give you a good example of that tonight. Now, I also could have put this particular segment in what we refer to as the Fat Files, which is talking about the obesity epidemic and the latest in the fat is the new tobacco that we've been covering for years as well. It falls into that as well, but we're going to put it into the Nutball Box, and you're going to hear why as the, well, you know what? Let's just save it. It's from our band Bale and Linnekin at Reason Magazine. It's a great article. And as you go into the article, it goes in, you're probably saying, well, I'm not that interested in this. This doesn't really affect me. And then as you get deeper to understand what's really at stake, you should be terrified by the end of it. And that's how we'll end our show. So that's what we got on tap tonight. Sit back, listen, enjoy, If you're watching us on video, it's great video, by the way. You're going to want to check that out. But I need to let you know at the beginning here. Let's do some housekeeping here. Tonight's episode is brought to you by a friend, Brad Roars at Howard Bank. Howard Bank, by the way, is the official bank of Red Maryland and the official bank that I use personally and for my law office as well. We highly recommend it. Brad does home purchases, loans, refinances, rehab loans. He does VHA, FHA, conventional, whatever you need. If you're thinking about buying a home or refinancing the home that you're in, call Brad Roars. Go to bradthebanker.com. You see his link here if you're watching the video. bradthebanker.com. You can call him directly, 443-876-2846. The number again, 443-876-2846. Brad is a great friend of ours. He's a big supporter of what we do here at Red Maryland and conservatives throughout the state, so please do support him. Also wanted to let you know that tonight's show is brought to you by the Montgomery County Republican Party, and they invite you to their annual convention on Saturday, February 23rd. The convention begins at 8, the Hilton Washington, D.C. North Gaithersburg, which is located at 620 Perry Parkway in Gaithersburg. Keynote speaker for this year's convention is our friend WMAL's Larry O'Connor, and features a special message from Governor Hogan, update from Delegate Neil Parrott on redistricting as well. A lot of good stuff to check out there. More information, go to mcgop.com/convention 2019, brought to you by Montgomery County Republican Central Committee, Don Irvine, Treasurer. All right, let's get right into it. And by the way, as you're listening, you want to give us your feedback, feel free to send it to us, redmaryland@gmail.com. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. You all know we're on Facebook. Let's start with the legislative session. We'll go to this article from the Washington Post. We'll talk about House Budget Chair calls Hogan's fiscal plan a great beginning. I don't know why the scare quotes there. Maryland Democratic legislative leaders emerged largely upbeat Friday from an initial meeting from Governor Larry Hogan to discuss his $46.6 billion budget proposal, a contrast from some past years when battle lines were drawn over spending priorities. The spending plan does not include any dramatic changes or major initiatives that could be controversial. It boosts overall spending by 4% and increases funding for schools, health departments, and public safety. I think it's a great beginning to a second term, said Maggie McIntosh, Democrat from Baltimore City, chairman of the House Appropriations Committee. But McIntosh warned that the longer the partial federal government shutdown continues, costing Maryland an estimated $1.3 million to $1.5 million in revenue daily, the more difficult it will be to craft a balanced budget. We're going to have to be careful, she said. Every day the federal government's closed, the revenue projections we enjoyed coming into this session decrease. Going through the budget process without a major clash with the Democratic majority legislature would be a big win for Hogan as he tries to boost his national profile with a message of bipartisanship. The popular term-limited governor has made no secret of his antipathy for President Trump and Washington's polarized politics. He's being courted by some Republican critics of Trump as a potentially appealing alternative. We've talked all about that. Don't get hung up on that. That's the Washington Post trying to make this story a national edge on it. Legislative leaders and advocates were poring over the massive budget documents on Friday. Maryland Senate President Thomas V. Mike Miller and House Speaker Mike Bush said they were largely pleased with the fiscal plan, which almost provides for a 3% pay raise for state employees. The legislature will debate, modify, and approve the budget in coming weeks. And remember, folks, under the Maryland Constitution, the legislature can only cut. They cannot add to the budget, which is why having a Republican governor is such a big deal as a starting point. As if to prove my point, he's a Republican governor. He's increased spending by 4%, Miller said of Hogan's plans. He's taking care of state employees. He's taking care of our retirees and funding education. Things look good. The state teachers union, which clashed with Hogan during his first 4 years in office, were less impressed by the $6.9 billion allocated for They weren't satisfied with $6.9 billion allocated for education, noting that the $347 million increase over last year's appropriation was mandated by the. So, we only gave them $350 million more of our money this year, and that's not enough for them. Okay? We're spending $6.9 billion a year on education right now. They want to add another $4 billion to that under Kerwin. Think about that. That's 10% of the overall state spending. That's a 2/3 increase of what we're spending right now. But this is what they said. The MSEA, the teachers unions, the bane of our existence, if you're conservative in this state, It's a status quo autopilot budget that continues to utilize outdated funding formulas that leave our schools under. No, they're not underfunded. They're not underfunded. $7 billion is not enough to fund our public schools. A $350 million increase, okay, covering every mandate that the Democrats want. Of course, it's a record increase. The Democrats get tired of hearing that, even though it's true. They don't want to give the governor credit for finding a budget, by the way, that does this without raising taxes and, in fact, has a small tax cut in the budget that he has here and still shoring up our rainy day fund in case we do have a recession next year, as is being predicted. Advocates and legislative leaders had hoped to pursue bolder changes in education spending this year, based on recommendations from a panel known as the Kirwan Commission that was tasked with advising the legislature on how to transform the state's public school system into a world-class system. But the commission postponed coming up with proposals for new funding formulas and instead asked the government to set aside $200 million for initial policy changes and to use $125 million in tax revenue from Maryland casinos to make additional increases in teacher pay and to further expand pre-kindergarten. See, this was the nose under the tent that they wanted, another $325 million. Because that $325 million, once you start those programs, you're going to have to increase the spending every year. That's what Governor Hogan very adroitly avoided doing. Hogan's plan includes $200 million Kirwan requested, but would use $65 million of the $125 million in the casino revenue to pay for school construction, which by the way, the Democrats would also say is underfunded. Nearly $36 million would go toward current commission recommendations. So they want $300 million. The governor gives them $36 million. The proposal is a change for the governor, who left Democrats and union leaders frustrated last month when he called for using far more of the casino money for school construction. Okay, so you get the idea. There's a link at this at redmaryland.com. You can go check it out. Now, a couple things I want to comment on this while we're at it. And a couple key points here. Number one, it's the fifth year in a row that we have a balanced budget, has to be balanced, that does not have a tax increase. That's huge. I don't think we've had a 5-year period in the state where we haven't had a tax increase, including, by the way, the Ehrlich years. So this is for a long, long time. So this is huge, okay? That's number one. If Governor Hogan had not been reelected, they'd be talking about how to jack up taxes. Number two, 4% increase. I know a lot of you 14%ers are going to say that's too much of an increase in spending. Okay, fine. But keep in mind that much of that goes to the rainy day fund, okay? Much of that is mandated spending that the governor's required to do that. I know that there are some extremists who want the governor to fight against the mandates in court, and maybe it will come to that. Look, if we end up getting the recession, if we end up getting a decrease in revenues as some of the more dire consequences, some of the more dire predictions are out there saying is going to happen, then there is going to be a push in future years. Look, it's very simple. The Democrats have unrealistic mandated spending. Brian talked about this on the air raid last night. There are huge deficits in years out because of that mandated spending. The governor has pushed back on that without success because the legislature has to – it's ultimately going to come to a head. Eventually, there is going to be a confrontation. It doesn't have to be this year, okay? Now, some of you will say, and you'll be fair to say it, that one of the reasons the governor is able to do what he has done is because of an increase to state revenue caused by changes in the federal tax code. That all of that money, hundreds of millions of dollars more, should be going back to Maryland taxpayers. Remember, the governor wanted to send all that back. He got some of it sent back, but the Democrats in the legislature thwarted him. So he's taking that money and he's putting it into the state's rainy day fund. He's not spending it. He's setting it aside so that in future years, when we have deficits and there's going to be a push to raise taxes, he's got that money in the rainy day fund to use. Look, it's clear as the nose on your face what the difference between what the Democrats want to do and what Governor Hogan wants to do. Governor Hogan wants to continue his plan of balancing the budget without raising taxes. And in fact, he has a small income tax cut here for retiree income. And he wants to do some other pro-growth tax cuts. They're very modest. We'd all like to see him go further. The fact is he's going to have a hard time getting getting any tax cut passed, no matter how reasonable or popular or how many Democrats have been in favor of it in the past. But this budget does maintain a trajectory that is sustainable. Okay? He's avoided the trap of Kerwin that's going to massively increase spending. He's been able to navigate the minefield of mandated spending this year. He's avoided raising taxes, which is an amazing accomplishment. He's got to get the legislature to go with him to reduce taxes even more. And the extra money that is there, that extra revenue, as a result of the failure of the legislature to work with him to fix what came as a result of the changes, the tax changes in Washington, which resulted in more of us spending, having to pay more income tax to the state of Maryland, less overall. 71% of us are going to pay less income taxes overall, but we're going to pay more to the state. Because they failed to do that, the coffers have more money in them. Now, the Democrats, of course, want to spend it all and then some, and then a lot more. And to make up that difference, they want to legalize drugs and they want to expand gambling, and but that won't be enough. So they're going to come back to gas taxes, income taxes. Oh, it'll just be on the rich to start, but we know how it goes. We've seen this song and dance before under Martin O'Malley. We can have confidence in this budget that even though it has 4% overall increase in spending, the governor has a trajectory that is sustainable. So I think overall, I think as conservatives, as Republicans, we have to be pretty happy, especially when you consider what the alternative would be and the fact that the legislature's got to go along with them. Now, the fact that we have some dismal fiscal overview caused by the partial shutdown, caused by whatever else, is a double-edged sword. It has the positive effect of putting the damper on Democrats' willingness to spend money. And the governor's ready to accept their support in limiting growth in state spending, which, again, is going to come to a head in the future. Unfortunately, it also means that it puts the damper on any real tax relief that the governor would like to get done, and that's going to be a problem. Because we'd like to see him reduce the overall size of government. The way you do that is you have less money coming in. Right now, that's not the issue, in part because of the changes that happened in Washington resulted in increased state income tax revenue. And the governor was thwarted in his efforts to give all that back to the taxpayers. You know, the governor can control spending to the extent that mandates don't overrule him. And yeah, that's going to come to a head eventually. One of two things is either going to happen in the years out, either during the Hogan administration or afterward. This is going to be an ongoing issue. Either the Democrats are going to continue to mandate spending that's unsustainable, and that the governor has to challenge that legally in his prerogatives as governor, or the legislature is going to have to back off the mandated spending, which seems unlikely, or the Democrats are going to get control and they're going to raise taxes. Okay. Or they're going to have to raise taxes over the governor's veto, which I think would be a disaster for them to try to do. This governor has shown every indication, and will in the future, every indication to oppose any tax increase. And his record is extraordinary on that front. And that is, look, as much as folks on our side, especially the 14%ers, look at things that the governor has done and don't like it, he has never broken his promise not to raise taxes. He hasn't made the mistake Bob Ehrlich did. And before you send me, well, state property taxes are going up because the valuations are going up. The rate's not going up. It's not the same thing. Your house is worth more. That's a good thing. Okay? You want to challenge it. There's a process to do that. This is not a tax increase from the governor. If he were ultimately to give in on that, then he would break faith, and I think that 14% would get a lot. 14% of Republicans who would disapprove of the job he's doing would get a lot bigger real quick. But right now, I think there's a lot to be happy about. We'll see going forward. The mandated spending is a problem. The Democrats, because of the super majorities they have as a result of partisan redistricting, are able to mandate unsustainable spending. we have a balanced budget amendment. So something's got to give. Either we got to cut spending or we got to raise taxes. So far, the governor's been able to navigate that without raising taxes and, in fact, cutting them. But something's going to come to a head in the coming years, and it'll be interesting to see. And Kerwin is only going to accelerate that if it's ever adopted. And I think that's why the governor knows he can't have anything to do with it. Now, will the Democrats force it through over his objection and his veto? We'll see. We'll see. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, lots of cycling news. And by the way, this budget story, this is going to be the story for not just the next 4 years, but this is going to be the biggest issue going into the 2022 elections, guarantee you. Because if the governor's successful, the Democrats are really going to want to push back because they've been thwarted. And, I mean, the tax issue is the strongest issue that Maryland Republicans have. And we'll see if the Democrats learn something. They probably won't. They probably won't. It's not their one. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll have more. You're listening to, well, let me have him tell you. If I could pull up the sound thing here. I love technology.
You are listening to Conservative Refuge Radio on the Red Maryland Network.
We'll be right back.
You can help Red Maryland grow our reach when you visit redmaryland.com and click on the Amazon link and shop as normal. A portion of your purchase will come back to Red Maryland to help us grow. Additionally, you can buy Red Maryland t-shirts, drinkware, and other gear from our Zazzle store at zazzle.com/redmaryland. We want to hear from you. Email us at any time at redmaryland@gmail.com. You can also leave audio feedback on our Red Maryland talkback line at 410-205-4875. We might use your feedback on our programming. You are listening to Maryland's most trusted conservative voice, the Red Maryland Network. Be sure to follow Red Maryland on all of the major social networking sites. You can follow us at Red Maryland on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Google+, Snapchat, and Tumblr to get the latest from Red Maryland. And be sure to follow the home base for all things Red Maryland, redmaryland.com. Celebrating 5 years as Maryland's only network that matters. You're listening to the Red Maryland Network.
That old school dies. Radio Company. Bicycle, bicycle, bicycle. I want to ride my bicycle, bicycle, bicycle. I want to ride my bicycle. I want to ride my bike. I want to ride my bicycle. I want to ride it where I like. You say black, I say white. You say bar, I say bite. You say shark, I say him. And Jaws was never my scene, and I don't like Star Wars. You say Rose, I say Royce. You say God, give me a choice. Say Lord, I say Christ. I don't believe in Peter Pan, Frankenstein, or Superman. All I wanna do is
All right, we're back here on Conservative Refuge Radio. Folks, I am your host, Greg Klein.
Very angry. I'm sorry, not very angry. Let's not ascribe these.
I like
things
his voice though. It's a good voice.
Well, he classic radio voice. Greg Klein, as he said.
Voice.
Yeah. Jerry Rogers, Andrew Langer, stars of WBAL and co-hosts of the Realm Network's Langercast. Both of them will be presenting at the Red Maryland Leadership Conference this Saturday, January 26th. I hope you got tickets. If not, it's sold out. The deadline for sponsorships is over. We're locked in. We've got our agenda. Jerry and Andrew will both be presenting panels. Jerry in the morning, Andrew in the afternoon. Andrew will also be doing his WBAL show live from the DoubleTree in Annapolis before the event. We're very excited about that. It's going to be a great time. I hope you got tickets. And if you didn't, we'll set it up on this week's Red Maryland Radio. We'll give you the full preview. We're really stoked. We're really excited about it. If you don't make it this year, there'll be another chance for you next year. But get your tickets early. That's all I can say. We're really looking forward to it. All right, just a quick reminder. Today's show, Conservative Refuge Radio, brought to you by Bradley Roars. Bradley is our friend over at Howard Bank. He's a loan specialist over there. He does purchase loan, refinance, rehab loans. He does VA, FHA, conventional, whatever you need. If you're looking to buy a home, to refinance, to do any of those types of things, contact our friend Bradley Roars at Howard Bank. Go to his website, bradthebanker.com. You can see it here if you're watching the video. And you can always give him a call, 443-876-2846. Please do support him. And also support our friends over at the Montgomery County Republican Party. They've got their annual convention on Saturday, February 23rd. You're going to want to check that out. Begins at 8 a.m. It's at the Hilton Washington in D.C. North Gaithersburg. If you don't know where that is, it's 620 Perry Parkway in Gaithersburg. Their keynote speaker is WMAL's Larry O'Connor. They got a special message from Governor Hogan, and they're going to have an update from Delegate Neil Parrott on the redistricting in the 6th District, which certainly will affect folks in Montgomery County. For more information, you can shoot them an email, convention@mcgop.com, or just go to their website, mcgop.com/convention2019, and that message brought to you by Montgomery County Republican Central Committee, Don Irvine, treasurer. All right, I played Queen's Bicycle Race, and I play that song when we do cycling news because I love the lyrics in that song. The cyclist in there really represents the kind of attitude that many cyclists have. Contrarian, arrogant, so on and so forth. And we've been covering for years, and go to redmaryland.com. If you're new to the Conservative Refuge podcast, God bless you. Welcome. If you're a fan for a long time, you've heard me do this for years, these segments. Now, cyclists have become, and have been for quite some time, very effective at lobbying policymakers and legislators at every level of government, local government, state level, and even on the national level in the federal government, to get more pro-cycling policies. Now, cyclists represent a very small percentage of people in our society. And in fact, the core cyclists who are really pushing this, the people who really ride their bikes on roadways particularly, who are pushing all of this stuff, represent a very, very small, minuscule proportion of the general culture. They're a very small proportion of the people who travel back and forth to work every day, who use their transportation infrastructure. They are wildly overrepresented in the halls of the General Assembly, in local councils, and so on and so forth. And they're very effective. And they are largely made up of affluent, predominantly white folks. And they're very good at advocating for their position. And they have great coverage in the media, which is almost completely unchallenged. And they're often very successful, and you rarely see any sort of pushback until they've actually succeeded and people start to live under the world that they've created, and they say, wait a minute, this is terrible. One of the things I've been doing is being a voice in the wilderness for years, and the chorus is growing as I've been here. I've noticed, I've tracked that phenomenon as well. One of the things I've done every year is to talk about the in the General Assembly here in Maryland, every session for the last few years particularly, the bicycle lobby has an agenda. They have a very specific agenda that they outline, and one organization or another will have it on their website or on their Facebook page, and they have very specific legislation that they want to push forward. Okay. In years past, it was a bicycling safety commission, which I jokingly said I should be appointed to. And Chris Cavey thought I was serious at one point, and almost was like, is Klein serious? Does he really want to be on? No, I was not. But the reason I wasn't serious about being on it, because it wasn't serious about bicycle safety. If we really wanted to protect the safety of cyclists, what we would do is create an infrastructure where cyclists stay on cycling paths and trails and keep them separated from roadways with cars and trucks. That would actually do more to keep them safe. That's not what cyclists want. Cyclists want to have a transportation infrastructure that is integrated with bicycles, no matter how impractical that is for 95, 97, 98% of us who are trying to commute and engage in commerce and do all those sorts of things. That's what they want. And their influence is wildly out of proportion to the percentage of the population that they represent. And the result has been that they've been able to enact laws. And they've pushed for a number of things over the years, some of which they're pushing for this year again, some of which they've kind of backed away from. One of the things that they've done over the years that I've noticed as a trend is they've tried to do two things. They want to be treated as motorists when it's beneficial to them. In other words, have access to roadways. There have been legislation bills in the past that have not wanted to bind to mandate that cyclists stay in bicycle lanes. Oh, they want the money for the bicycle lanes, granted, but the true mammals, the men in, by the way, that's an acronym for middle-aged men in Lycra, they want to be able to ride in the roadway with cars and trucks and not be with the relative amateurs riding in the bicycle lane. Okay, they want to go where they want when they want. They don't want to be segregated, but they still want the bicycle lanes. So what they've done in the name of safety is they want to be treated like motorists when it's beneficial to them, even when it's to the detriment of motorists. We're going to continue to see that. And at the same time, they want to be treated like pedestrians, even though they're not pedestrians. And so they have this very cynical thing where they'll lump cyclists in with, people in wheelchairs when it's beneficial to them, and then lump them in with motorists in cars and trucks when that's beneficial. Okay, because a bicycle isn't really either one of those things, and that's the problem. If we treated bicyclists the way we treat people who are in wheelchairs, yes, we're going to give them preferential treatment when it comes to crosswalks or things like that, but we're not going to let them ride down the middle of a 50-mile-an-hour road. We don't do that because that would be insanely unsafe. And if we had special areas for pedestrians to walk, we don't let pedestrians walk down the street with cars and trucks. We don't do that. See? But bicyclists don't want to be limited by those restrictions, so they sometimes want to, you don't know what I'm talking about. I'll show you. Let's go to, and I'll take my face out of this. This is Bike Maryland, your voice for bicycling in Maryland. This is their homepage. 2019 legislative session. Here's what they've got. Here's how they put it. It's that time of year again. This was written on January 9th, the first day of the legislative session. As you no doubt know, the 90 days when the legislature meets every year is prime time for Bike Maryland. We represent you before delegates and senators. Our legislative agenda largely revolves around two key bills that we first introduced last year, but as is common with legislation, we could not get them all the way passed, and so we're coming back there. See these guys? They have lobbyists. Bike Maryland is a lobbying arm of the cyclists. That's what they are. They're not shy about that. They raise money on that. What's interesting here, and go to the link, and if you're not watching the video, go watch the video of this. They list with links a number of legislators who are very supportive of the cause. Here's what they say. We would like to give specific note of thanks to delegates and senators we've been working closely with on the drafting and moving of bike and pedestrian-friendly legislation. Now, most of these people are all but one is a Democrat. Stick a pin in that. Most of them are from Montgomery County, with some exceptions. Most of them are white. Okay, not all of them, certainly. But they represent the kind of folks, affluent, liberal communities predominantly. That's their, the kind of, I won't say limousine liberal, that's overstating it, but the kind of, affluent white progressives that you associate with many parts of Montgomery County and places like that, parts of Baltimore County and Howard County and places like that. The people who would be viewing cycling as a way to save the planet types, okay, and who are big supporters. What's fascinating to me is that Delegate Andrew Cassilly, who is from District 33B, Cecil and Harford counties, is also one of the biggest supporters of the cycling lobby, according to Bike Maryland, a Republican. So if you drive a car in Cecil or Harford County, you might want to ask Delegate Cassilly what he's doing. My guess is, and I don't know Delegate Cassilly personally, but I'll try and follow up on this. My guess is he's He's probably an avid cyclist himself, be my guess. All right, now let's get into this legislation they want. The vulnerable road user legislation. This is one of the things they talked about that they tried to pass in previous years. And the reason it didn't pass is because it's terrible legislation. Okay? It's a terrible idea. And these guys couldn't get it through even, a very left-wing General Assembly. Here's how they describe it. Current Maryland law has a large gap in punishment between a standard traffic ticket and gross negligence. Yes, it does, because there is a large difference with the law. Therefore, when a vulnerable road user, can't see air quotes on the radio, like cyclist or pedestrian, is struck and injured by a motorist who has violated the law, the punishment, unlike there is a cause for gross negligence such as intoxication, is a traffic ticket. This legislation provides that if a motorist breaks the law and seriously injures a vulnerable road user, they are subject to a law which requires a court appearance and a larger collection of potential penalties, including fines, license suspension, community service, and driver education. Okay, here we go. Now, they want to lump in cyclists with pedestrians. Now, remember what I said before where pedestrians don't walk down the middle of the road? Okay, cyclists do and can. All right. In fact, as we get to in the next bill they want to pass, they want to get over, you're going to have to wait behind them as a motorist. What they essentially want to do is give cyclists preferential treatment on roadways. And the way they want to do that is they want to lump them in with pedestrians. So pedestrians deserve higher levels of protection, right? Because they're pedestrians. But pedestrians aren't treated like motor vehicles. As I said, they're not allowed to walk down the road over a certain speed limit. Cyclists are. They're not allowed to walk in the lanes, through lanes of traffic. We don't allow people to walk through that. Cyclists are. So cyclists are vulnerable because what they do, riding a bicycle with cars and trucks, is an inherently dangerous activity. Okay? It's something that pedestrians don't do and don't need to do. And in fact, we actively have laws to prevent pedestrians from doing a lot of things that cyclists are able to do. To wit, riding in the middle of the road, especially in speeds of, over 25 miles an hour. But see, if cyclists had to follow the same rules, they wouldn't be able to do what they want to do. So that doesn't work for them. Okay, so again, they want to create a preference. Now, what this means is if you get into an accident, and that's what we're talking about here. If you get in an accident with a cyclist and it's your fault, you're going to have greater punishment than if you got into an accident with another car and it was your fault. In other words, they're going to treat cyclists, even though they're in the roadway like another motorist, they're going to have greater penalties for an accident involving a cyclist than for another motorist. You see what I'm saying? It's a specialty treatment that cyclists are getting. The net result of this is not going to be that roadways are going to be safer. They're not. The net result is going to be that motorists are going to be punished. That you're going to have this special class of people who get to wear tight pants and ride their bikes down the road. And if you get into an accident with them and it's determined it's your fault, you're going to get a greater punishment than if they do something wrong and get hurt. See what I'm saying? Or if you hit another car. If you hit another car, that's a traffic ticket. If you hit a cyclist, it's much worse because they're vulnerable. Now, that isn't going to prevent injuries. That's simply going to punish motorists more. Now, if the motivation behind this were truly to protect the safety of bicyclists, what we'd be doing is trying to get cyclists off the roads with cars and trucks because that would protect them. This is simply to punish motorists and create a greater burden, by the way, directly tied to insurance rates. This is one of the reasons it's failed in the past. They want to create strict liability, which this would do. Okay? And they're doing this in this very deceitful way of treating cyclists like pedestrians. even which I'm fine with if cyclists have to obey all the same rules pedestrians do. Because if cyclists want to be treated like pedestrians, they're not going to be on the roadways with cars and trucks because pedestrians aren't allowed to do that. You follow what I'm saying? They'd have to stay off to the side. They'd have to stay on the median, on the side. They couldn't be in lanes of traffic. Okay? The fact is, when bicyclists ride down the road with cars and trucks, whether it's a busy 35-mile-an-hour byway through a town, whether it's a rural highway, whether it's a busy city street, riding a bicycle on those areas is inherently dangerous. And it's inherently dangerous because of what I like to call probability and physics. Okay? You cannot make cycling on roadways with cars and trucks safe. You can't do it. All you can do is try to apportion the risk. And so as a society, are we going to apportion the risk on the motorist with greater insurance costs and greater potential punishment if a collision occurs? And by the way, I'm not talking about drunk people hitting cyclists or doing something intentional or anything like that. No one's advocating that or saying that that's okay. It's not. But the fact is, you can't have bodies in motion and not have them run into each other. That's just physics. That's just going to happen. It's a probability. And it's very cynical on the part of these cyclists to advocate for bills for a small minority of people who are going to be able to take advantage of them, which are going to inconvenience and burden the majority of us, certainly all of us who ride and drive motor vehicles or get our goods or services delivered to us through cars and trucks, which, by the way, that's really all of us. This is what's going on. So you need to know this. So if this were to pass, don't be surprised. Same way with the safe passing. This is something I talked about for years. We have a law in Maryland that provides that you have to give a 3-foot cushion to a bike if you pass it. Okay, that's a safety thing. All right? Cyclists are very afraid of people coming too close and being aggressive with them and doing all this kind of stuff. I don't advocate that. Don't do that. Coal rolling, all that stuff. Don't do that. That's bad stuff. But here's my problem. They want to have a bill that says if there's not enough room that a car could safely pass with a 3-foot cushion, you just have to sit and wait. You just have to sit and wait behind a bicycle. So a bicycle can impede the flow of vehicular traffic because there's not enough space to get around. And you're just going to have to deal with it. That's a direct burden upon motorists. And why? Why is it so important that we allow this to happen? It's not going to make bicycling safer, okay? It's a burden upon motorists to benefit the preferred avocation of cyclists, bottom line. And it goes on like this. They want to design roadways and design communities to integrate streets so that people can ride their bikes, so we can expand more and more bikes on the roadways. There's a direct result in this. They have this here in Anne Arundel County when it comes to zoning. You're not seeing this happen. It's not on the front page. Nobody is talking about it. And if you don't pay attention, you're going to wake up one day and you or somebody you know is going to wonder why your car insurance is going up. You're going to wonder, all these bikes riding around on the roads, and God forbid you get into an accident with them because it's going to be your fault and you're going to have to pay and you're going to go to jail. So that these guys can ride around their tight pants, and meanwhile they're going to look down their nose at the rest of us and say, you should be like us, you should support us because we're in good shape, we're saving the world, we're physically fit, and you're the ones who don't get it with your car culture and everything else. You're the meanie bobinis who are driving motor vehicles and scaring us. This is what we're up against, folks. And we got Republicans supporting this. We got people like Delegate Andrew Serafini supporting this stuff. I'm sorry, not Serafini. Sorry. Casserly, Delegate Casserly supporting this stuff. You need to be aware of it because I'm going to tell you it's going to come back and it's going to bite you. And when it does, there's going to be a huge bike lash like we've seen so many other times in Baltimore City and the bike lash I talked about in our last show, the Haddam Bridge and so many other things. But it's always after the fact because these guys are out working. They're funding Bike Maryland. By the way, get involved, donate. They've got wealthy people who enjoy the avocation of riding a bicycle on roadways, And they got the wherewithal to get to these legislators and make them listen. And they sell them this bill of goods about how cycling is going to save the world. And it's a very progressive utopian vision. And I'm shocked that people like Delegate Andrew Castley are falling for this nonsense. Okay, end of sermon. Don't say you haven't been warned. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk more craziness when we come back.
You are listening to Conservative Refuge Radio on the Red Maryland Network.
You are. We'll be right back.
You can help Red Maryland grow our reach when you visit redmaryland.com and click on the Amazon link and shop as normal. A portion of your purchase will come back to Red Maryland to help us grow. Additionally, you can buy Red Maryland t-shirts, drinkware, and other gear from our Zazzle store at zazzle.com/redmaryland. We want to hear from you. Email us at any time at redmaryland@gmail.com. You can also leave audio feedback on our Red Maryland talkback line at 410-205-4875. We might use your feedback on our programming. You are listening to Maryland's most trusted conservative voice, the Red Maryland Network. Be sure to follow Red Maryland on all of the major social networking sites. You can follow us at Red Maryland on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Google+, Snapchat, and Tumblr to get the latest from Red Maryland. And be sure to follow the home base for all things Red Maryland, redmaryland.com. Celebrating 5 years as Maryland's only network that matters. You're listening to the Red Maryland Network.
Wherever you are, whatever you do, have a nice day. Sky Radio 8
All right, we're back. That was kind of... didn't expect that. You're back. You're listening to Conservative Refuge Radio here on the Red Maryland Network. I am your host, Greg Klein.
Bah humbug harumph. Stay off of my lawn.
Yes, thank you guys. It's not stay off my lawn. You all got excited there for a second. We haven't done that segment for a while. We'll bring it back. What we also haven't done for a while on the Conservative Refuge podcast is a segment that I like to call the Nutball Box. This is where we comment upon extreme ideas that have become more mainstream, and there's a lot of them today. It's almost beyond description how many extreme ideas have become mainstream. And the one that I want to discuss with you today is animal rights wackery. We've talked about this in many different forums in the past. Animal rights advocates and those kind of folks, the PETA type folks, you know what I'm talking about, the science. The Center for Science and the Public Interest types. They want to destroy American agriculture, our economy, and they want to do it through the legal system, both legislative and judicial, and finding rights for animals, which would radically change the way that we exist. I've talked about that before. Go back and listen to some of those segments we've done. This one involves something, and I want to go to our friend Balin Linnekin here at Reason Magazine. This goes to the decision about the California decision to ban foie gras. I almost said it right the first time. Now, I don't know how many of you listening to this enjoy the duck liver-based treat that is foie gras. Personally, not a big fan. Doesn't matter. It's not the point. California decided to make it illegal. The animal rights activists say that it's cruel, and it's the way that it's harvested is cruel to the animals, so on and so forth. And it's been in litigation. But you may say, I don't really eat it. Who cares? Well, let's get into this with Balin Linnekin here, and you'll find out why you should care, because it's a lot more than just foie gras. U.S. Supreme Court announced Monday that it would not yet hear an appeal in a case challenging California's unconstitutional and much reviled foie gras ban. The case will now head back to the U.S. District Court in California. The Supreme Court's decision is a temporary setback for foie gras producers, chefs, and others fighting the law. They vowed to continue their efforts. Michael Tannenbaum, who represents the plaintiffs in the case, told me this week that he and his clients look forward to proceeding with the case and that they're confident they will prevail. I am too. This is Balin Linnegan writing this. His words, my voice. Meanwhile, though, restaurants and others in California that serve foie gras could face fines of $1,000 for any violation of the law. Animal rights groups applauded this week's Supreme Court decision. PETA called the denial of cert a victory for animals that follows tireless efforts from animal rights activists to oppose the archaic foie gras industry. The Animal Legal Defense Fund hailed the decision as a landmark moment for ducks. A landmark moment for ducks. Incorrectly labeling the Supreme Court's action as a death knell and the foie gras industry's last appeal. Get to that in a second. But supporters of foie gras, the Constitution, and food freedom were disheartened by the court's actions. Culinary leaders from California chefs to French foie gras producers are aghast. I am too. Earlier this year, I wrote and submitted an amicus brief in support of the petitioners in this case, foie gras producers and sellers, on behalf of both the Reason Foundation, the nonprofit that publishes Reason, and the Cato Institute, in which I urged the Supreme Court to take up the foie gras case. I won't rehash the legal arguments here. Those interested in that can learn by doing so my reading in April. And I have a link at redmaryland.com. You can go read his legal arguments. We noted in our brief that Thomas Jefferson and James Madison opposed bans on various types of foods and liquors as lunacy and despotic, says Manny Klausner, a former editor of Reason, a Reason Foundation co-founder and board member, an attorney who joined me on the Reason Cato amicus brief. The Supreme Court's denial of cert is a sad occasion for those who support free minds and free markets. The Supreme Court laid an egg with its new decision not to review California's foie gras ban, says Elia Shapiro, director of the Robert A. Levy Center for Constitutional Studies at the Cato Institute, who, like Klausner, joined me on the Reason Cato brief. I'm not a big fan of this stuff myself. I prefer goose liver pate, but reasonable people should be able to disagree on matters of good taste without running afoul of the law. Nanny statism is for the bird. Come on, man. Let's be serious here. In the amicus brief and elsewhere, including the OC Register op-ed last year, I've argued, and this is Balin Lincoln talking again, that the implications and reverberations of the foie gras case extend well beyond foie gras and could ensnare almost every conceivable animal product. And this is where you need to listen, including beef, pork, and chicken. The concerns I expressed then are even more apparent today, given that the Supreme Court also this week rejected challenges to two separate animal rights laws in Massachusetts and California that, just like the foie gras ban, serve as unconstitutional impediments to interstate commerce and animal products. The laws, while different from one another, restrict the ability of farmers to cage egg-laying hens and other livestock. Interfering with interstate commerce is exactly what these laws intend and what they do. Consider that a poll, much touted among animal rights activists, last year found nearly half the respondents want to ban slaughterhouses and so-called factory farming. Can't see air quotes. Well, you can't see me doing the air quotes. You're reading along with me. A full one-third of Americans, the poll claims, want to ban all livestock farming. Period. A ban on livestock farming would mean that nearly all animal-derived foods, from prime rib to pork chops, bacon, chicken nuggets, would disappear for good. Again, that's by design. A Vox piece in November that discussed a new book, The End of Animal Farming, details how the book lays out the steps over the next century to end the farming of animals. Notably, Americans ate records amount of meat last year, while rates of veganism and vegetarianism continue to stagnate. But there's more. With the foie gras banned and the Massachusetts and California animal rights laws allowed to stand, for now at least, I have little doubt that other U.S. states where livestock farming and exports of animal products play a leading economic role will find creative ways to retaliate against California and Massachusetts. Animal rights supports might not like these laws so much. Lawmakers in a state impacted by California's animal rights law might pass a law that says all eggs sold in their state may come only from caged hens. An old justification would do, but let's go with the food safety argument that they're much more hygienic than eggs from free-roaming chickens. Such a law would effectively spell the end of California egg exports to that state. Or, as I suggested in a 2014 column, states concerned about the environmental challenges and consequences of growing foods in drought-prone areas might pass a law that no food or beverage sold in the state may be produced in a drought-stricken or prone region. Farmers in California, America's largest agricultural producer by far, but also one of its most drought-prone states, they'd be out of luck. So, too, would be the winemakers and beer producers who contribute hundreds of billions of dollars to the state's economy. But such a law would be a tremendous boon for foods and beverages produced in other states and in foreign countries. The law would also carry a false veneer of green lawmaking that would be sure to drive California policymakers mad. Would I approve of laws like these? Hell no, not ever. There's one reason I'm frustrated by the Supreme Court's failure to take up the trio of food freedom cases this week. It increases chances we'll see much more laws and the inevitable legislative reprisals, and that cycle will harm consumers, farmers, interstate commerce, and business of all sizes. What's next for the challenge to California's foie gras ban? Well, the case has taken years already to wind its way through federal court. The suit was filed in U.S. District Court in 2012, the day after the ban took effect. That court granted summary judgment striking down the ban, but the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed the district court ruling in 2017. Now the same U.S. District Court will hear the case. Federal legislative solutions are wanting. A bill that would strike down state bans on interstate commerce, such as those in California and Massachusetts, have gone nowhere, thanks largely to the fact that its sponsor is an unapologetic racist. Steve King, Republican, Iowa. I don't care if a person eats foie gras or hates it like the devil. I've taken an active role in defending the rights of vegan groups and others when government unconstitutionally restricts their rights in favor of meat producers. Why? Because the Constitution protects every person's right to eat meat and vegetables, or both, with equal vigor. Any day now, courts may recognize this simple fact. Okay, so this foie gras ban has the potential to lead to other laws, and we're already seeing them with regard to eggs and so forth in other states, that could destroy your ability to eat animal products. Because let's face it, if a state like California, which is a huge market, decides we're not going to accept these certain foods are produced in this certain way, that has a huge impact on producers. If Texas, as Bale and Linnekin points out, if Texas did something in response to that, they could have a huge. The idea in our Constitution is that interstate commerce is a federal concern to be determined by Congress. So those types of issues should be decided by Congress and regulated by Congress. Ideally, not regulated at all if you believe in free markets the way that our libertarian friends at Reason do, or most conservatives do. But you could get a very far left-wing state that has a very far left-wing legislature, probably partisan gerrymander to get it that way, that can pass some far left-wing ban on some food product that will have a dramatic effect on the availability of that food product in other parts of the country, to wit, interstate commerce. So you could have this tyranny of these liberal states when it comes to the food we eat. That's a problem, and that could affect us going forward. Congress could step in and do something. The courts could step in and do something. The answers are there, but it hasn't happened yet. And these nuts, these animal rights wackos, this extreme thinking that 10 or 15 years ago would have been just that, now they've got a game plan, which, by the way, they're executing, to end animal farming entirely. That would have a catastrophic effect, not just on our food, but on a great number of industries. And we've talked about this before. Very few people understand how many products are derived from animal and animal byproducts. It would be a devastating impact. And again, more people are eating meat. So it would be a direct attack on the freedom of most people who simply choose to consume those products. But if you sit back and wait, just like with the cycling thing, if you sit back and wait, you might wake up one day and find out that this law passed in California now makes it impossible for you to do something here. Or, it increases the price of eggs. And by the way, there's very questionable science as to whether that's a better type of egg to get, because they're not these policies aren't governed by reason or by food safety or anything like that, but by this insane idea of animal rights. So there you go. All right, let's wrap it up. Let's.
This thing is full of
bullshit.
bullshit.
I know. It's crazy.
Greg Klein's not going to like this.
No, he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it one bit. Guys, absolutely not. Let's wind up. Alec, could you come in? Thank you.
A, B, C.
Moody.
A, always B, B, C, closing. Always be closing.
Always be closing. All right, we're going to wrap it up. Folks, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you checked out the video. There's links to all this stuff at redmaryland.com. Again, urge you to support our friend Brad Roars at Howard Bank, who's sponsoring this show, and our friends at the Montgomery County Republican Party. We've got links and more information at redmaryland.com. We appreciate their support. We've got some great sponsors going in 2019. We've got a lot of great shows on the network, shows in development that we're going to share with you very, very soon. We're very excited about it. We've got our big leadership conference this Saturday. Hope all of you who have gotten a ticket will be there and enjoy it as much as we think you will. And I hope if you missed out, I hope you get excited about coming next year, because it's going to be a great event, and we're definitely going to be able to do it next year. So thanks to all your support. So with that, let me say thanks for listening. By the way, your feedback, we'd love to get it. The more negative, the better. redmaryland@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/redmaryland. We're on Twitter @redmaryland. You can call our talkback line. We're going to be coming up to events in the area. Brian and I are coming up to Washington County Wednesday night. We're traveling to Funkstown, wherever Funkstown is, and looking forward to meeting our friends up there. I shouldn't say that. Don't get mad. I'm making a joke. I know where Funkstown is. And, of course, our leadership conference, we're going to St. Mary's County later on. We'll be up in Frederick County, my native home, in April after the session. So we're looking forward to coming and meeting you. And if you lead a group or a central committee or somebody else who'd love for us to come out and talk a little bit about Red Maryland, we'd love to do that as well. Just go to redmaryland@gmail.com. You can give us a call, 410-205-4875. The number again, 410-205-4875. So, folks, thanks for listening. Tune in and subscribe to our Red Maryland Network programming. Support us in every way that you can. Go to our support us link, our subscribe link, get our newsletter, buy a T-shirt, throw a couple bucks our way to help improve the quality of our network shows and everything else that we're doing. Tell your friends. Just share what we're doing. We appreciate it. With that, let me say, hang in there. We will get there. And I'll leave you tonight with the brand new release from The Last in Line, their new album coming out very soon, simply called 2. It is called The Year of the Gun. Enjoy. Hang in there. We'll get there. This is Greg Klein from Conservative Refuge Radio. Take care.